And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Greetings. I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Wednesday, October 30th, 2024. And to set the stage on this Wednesday late morning, strong low pressures over the western Bering Sea with an occluded front arcing out ahead of it. That front will be making landfall along the southwest YK Delta as we go through late this Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday night, with the front pushing inland. Tonight and into early Thursday, there will be a band of IFR conditions associated with mainly light snow. Areas along sea level, coastal areas will get mainly a cold rain. The system will work its way gradually eastward on Thursday with a weak low, secondary low developing over the western Gulf. We also will see IFR conditions early Thursday here over areas of the Copper River Basin, Wrangell, St. Elias Mountains. And then for Thursday afternoon, as that front pushes a little further eastward, IFR conditions become more widespread along and south of the Alaska Range, including areas around Cook Inlet, the Kenai Peninsula, especially northern western Kenai, Prince William Sound into the Copper River Basin, and creeping upward into the upper Tanana valleys. And back to the west, MVFR conditions through the lower Yukon around Norton Sound, St. Lawrence, and the Seward Peninsula. For Friday morning, that system continuing northeastward, that low will gradually weaken on up along the northern Gulf Coast, but we do expect IFR conditions to prevail Friday morning over the southeast quadrant of the mainland along the Alcan border, Eagle, Northway, including Fairbanks, down through the east half of the Alaska Range, Copper River Basin, and again, Wrangell, St. Elias Mountains. Back to the southwest, wide area of IFR conditions across the southwest interior of the mainland. And then also IFR conditions along the central eastern Aleutians, creeping upward into the at least the southern portion of the Alaska Peninsula, because there is going to be another strong North Pacific low down around 955 millibars. It'll produce some high-end gale to low-end storm force winds as it works its way northeastward. That low is going to track up into the Gulf and eventually weaken later this weekend. But that's going to be the next weather player that's packing some pretty good wind and some moderate to locally heavier rainfall as it works its way northeastward. Question will be is exactly what impacts, if there'll be any wintry weather as it encounters some of the colder air here over the southern interior. But by Friday afternoon, we do anticipate IFR conditions southeast Bering along areas of the Alaska Peninsula and then the intercoastal mountains here along the northwestern Gulf, eastern Kenai on up toward the northern Gulf Coast, and then also along especially the south and east facing slopes along the western half of the Alaska Range with that upslope flow during the day on Friday. Also expect a pocket of IFR conditions along and east of the eastern Brooks Range to the Alcan border up there along the northern portion of the Yukon Flats. So past conditions on Thursday, Anaktuvuk Pass, we're looking at VFR conditions throughout the day, as well as Adigan Pass. We have a large area of high pressure sitting up in the Arctic Ocean, and generally high pressure will hold over the northern parts of the mainland. As we drop south, though, the influence of that front working its way eastward into south central. Lake Clark IFR throughout Thursday. Merrill starting out MVFR, becoming IFR, though, as conditions deteriorate, ceilings lower, and snow develops. Rainy Pass MVFR becoming IFR. Windy Pass IFR by certainly afternoon and evening. Again, as that area of snow spreads eastward with the lower ceilings and visibilities. On Thursday, Isabel Pass, MVFR becoming IFR as well. Mentasta Pass will generally see MVFR conditions during the day Thursday, though some IFR conditions will exist farther south across the Copper River Basin. And for Tanita Pass, MVFR conditions will give way to IFR conditions again, with the influences of that increasing moisture coming up from the south and west. Portage Pass, MVFR becoming IFR on Thursday. And out in the northern portion of the Panhandle, Chilkoot and White should generally see MVFR conditions throughout the day on Thursday. So to give you a sense, here we have the low. The low that's right now out in the western Bering's pretty strong. It will be weakening, though, on Thursday into Friday. The front arcing out ahead of it will have pushed into the southwest interior with some areas of light to maybe occasionally moderate snow, and then that's working up into south central. Notice the warming temperatures aloft along and ahead of the front We find freezing levels aloft out over the Gulf, rising 4,000 to 6,000 feet, up to 8,000 feet here as you get into the North Pacific. So that's just indicating that there's milder air, and obviously there'll be more moisture associated with that ahead of the front. Secondary low will be forming here in the western Gulf on Thursday and not become a major feature, but nevertheless a weather maker. And we do expect the potential for considerable moderate icing across areas of the central, back toward the western areas of, say, Norton Sound, southern Seward Peninsula, above 3,000 and 4,000 feet there from the interior back toward Norton Sound. As we get into south central in the precipitation-bearing clouds, you get up into that where the precipitation processes are going on. That's where you get the greatest icing, what we call the dendritic growth zone for the snow, so above 6,000 feet in this area of south central, and as you get further down into the Gulf, above 8,000 feet because of that milder air aloft, those freezing levels 6,000 and 8,000 feet. And then with the next low coming up out of the North Pacific, we find there could be some moderate icing along the central Aleutians southward above 6,000 feet during the day Thursday. Upper level winds, we have a belt of strong 130 to 145 knot jet core, anticyclonically curved because it's curved like high pressure, and northwesterly flow there, strongest out over the eastern Aleutians, lower end of the Alaska Peninsula. And as we bring things down to 9,000 feet or 700 millibars, we find there's a hint of that secondary low development. We do have some southerly flow coming up through the Gulf into Prince William Sound, 35 knots. Back out here toward the far southwest lower end of your screen here, 45 to 70 knot mid-level winds associated with that next North Pacific low. So here on Thursday, here's the remnants. That's the circulation, the remnant circulation that'll be in place. Still low pressure there in the western Gulf, but that feature will quickly diminish in intensity as we head through Thursday night, early Friday. But we do find that secondary low development with circulation showing up then over the western Gulf. And then back here south of the Aleutians, we find a stronger wind field at 3,000 feet, anywhere from 35 to 55 knots. That feature will be heading closer to the eastern half of the Aleutians, riding south, though, of them and south of the Alaska Peninsula before moving into the Gulf over this weekend. So the greatest threat for turbulence for Thursday, we'll find some moderate turbulence around Kodiak Island, maybe creeping upwards toward the entrance of Cook Inlet as that secondary low takes shape. Back to the west, we still have some brisk winds from the low that's sitting and beginning to weaken out over the western Bering, but moderate turbulence, surface to 4,000 feet here across the western half of the Aleutians with more isolated moderate turbulence. Eastern Aleutians up into the Alaska Peninsula. We could also encounter some isolated moderate turbulence along areas of the west from, say, around Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, down through the lower Chukchi Sea coastline, Bering Strait, north side of St. Lawrence, and also areas just east inland in the higher terrain east of Norton Sound on Thursday.